Do you vent to your investor or do you keep a united front to the investor?
It depends on the investor. And I think for an investor who has a relationship with the team that is equally invested in each co-founder, I think it's okay to use that person as a resource.
Okay.
Especially if they've named that they want to be used in that way. I think when there's, like, let's say more of a power dynamic or one of the main investors is only close with one person and they vent, they are single-handedly shaping that investor's perception of the other person.
Welcome to Managed Chaos Podcast, where we give you the startup business rundown in less time than it takes for you to get to work.
Today we are wrapping up our 4-part series on co-founder relationship dynamics. We are joined by the amazing Annie Garofalo. Annie, today we're going to shift gears a little bit and look at this from the investor lens. Because when you are starting a company, most of the time you're going to have to try and get outside investment at some point. And so how do VCs, how do funders typically look at a co-founded company?
It is a great question. And I would say that it has shifted a bit. So one of the big maybe myths that's out there is that you need a co-founder to fundraise.
I think the myth is that it seemed more stable, right? Even if one person was to disappear, for instance, let's say, right, things could still go on.
I think that that's true. Some investors will only invest in teams with co-founders. Some will only invest in solo founders. Like, there's just very different perspectives. We've actually seen in the research that there has been an increase in solo founders. And I think that that's in large part because of the technical fluency that your average person can have with the advent of AI. Or maybe it's not the advent, but the consumerization of it.
Yeah.
So there is a bit more openness to that. And I think that's really powerful. I don't believe that everyone needs a co-founder or everyone should have one. I do believe that for teams that have co-founders, it's the investor's responsibility to give them the tools to support. Just as they would in helping them find product market fit and helping them find early consumers and other elements that make a successful business, the co-founder relationship is one of the biggest strengths and one of the biggest risks of a startup company. And so from a systems level, I'm excited about what I hope is the next wave of portfolio support that's focused or includes co-founder relationships.
It does seem that VCs are starting to pay more attention, I think, to like the overall mental health of founding teams. And it would seem that doing something not completely alone inherently would help your mental health. But I think we've dived into a few things across the episodes where that could be either way, depending on the actual dynamic and their relationship. But if I'm an investor and I'm sitting in watching a pitch meeting, right?
Yeah.
What are red flags and what are green flags to me if I'm watching a founding team pitch and it's co-founders?
I mean, there's some that I think are really obvious and there's some that are just not predictable. So I can say for the things that are pretty obvious are if they're not on the same page about, even just what is shared when. They're interrupting each other. One person says something and the other person contradicts it. Clearly, there's not that shared foundation of understanding there. My favorite question is actually the question that Adam Grant asked in our deck, our co-founder mode deck, which is like, if this company failed, what would the reason be? And that's a really interesting. That's
a heavy question.
It's a heavy question. He calls it a pre-mortem. So it's like before anything's died, like what is the cause and how can you go about preventing that? And I think those two, the answers of each kind of co-founder can help you understand how they're thinking about the space, how they're thinking about the risks. And it's less about what their exact answer is and it's more how they answer it and how comfortable they are and have they thought about that.
And have they even had the conversation?
Have they had the conversation?
Are they actually talking to each other?
Yes. So that's kind of in the telltale signs. And I'd say, there's 30% of teams where you can predict they're just not going to work. I'd say there's 30% of teams or so where you're like, they're going to work. You just see it. They're magic. Their chemistry is amazing. And then I think there's this middle tier of companies where they, with the right resources and the right support, they can thrive as a co-founder relationship, but they do need that kind of intervention early on. And those ones, it's harder to tell in an early pitch. And it's also really exciting, I think, for investors because they can really make a difference there.
I love that. Is this something similar that you do when you go to a wedding? Is it like 30, 30,
30. I'm like, do they need help?
Are they going to make it? So let's say from an investor standpoint, right? So there is this level of responsibility or fiduciary responsibility to the actual longevity of the company once you've invested. Mm-hmm. And so if it is a co-founded company and you are realizing they need to consciously uncouple, as the investor, how can you help guide that in such a way that the company comes out unscathed?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's hard.
Yeah.
I guess we'll just start with that. Like, it's not an easy one.
If it was easy, everyone would do it.
If it was easy, everyone would do it. Yeah, exactly. This is more of an ideal scenario. Ideally, you're an investor and you realize that things might be hard between two co-founders, or that someone's maybe not scaling with the company, or any of the issues that we've talked about in the past few episodes are coming up.
Yeah.
That you help them address that. And maybe that's not through you. Like, investors aren't usually trained in relationship therapy, but there's plenty of folks out there who you could bring in to have a conversation, whether it's with the team as a partnership or as an executive coach to support that person in growing. But I'd say bringing in someone to support and having that conversation with that co-founder directly versus going through the other co-founder, which is something I've seen investors do, like pick a favorite.
Right.
And just because, the CEO is fundraising, usually it's the CEO that the investors are closer to. And if they have comments on the CTO, we'll go through the CEO, and that creates this hierarchy and conflict. And so as an investor, just being really thoughtful about those power dynamics, and like, even if it's not your main point of contact, like taking that extra step to supporting each co-founder directly.
Which brings me to a somewhat hard question that we didn't necessarily prep for. So feel free to throw the cards.
That last one was already hard.
Feel free to throw the cards at me. But we talked in a previous episode about not venting down, not venting to other people within the company. But as co-founders, do you vent to your investor, or do you keep a united front to the investor?
It depends on the investor. And I think for an investor who has a relationship with the team that is equally invested in each co-founder, I think it's okay to use that person as a resource.
Okay.
Especially if they've named that they want to be used in that way. I think when there's, like, let's say more of a power dynamic, or one of the main investors is only close with one person and they vent, they are single-handedly shaping that investor's perception of the other person. So I would say there's some instances, although I will say very few, where an investor can be a really helpful, like, supportive space for venting or for talking about your co-founder relationship. Back to what I said in the previous episode, aligning up front with your co-founder on who you want to have as in your shared network as a support resource. Investors are also a shared network. So if you're friends and you're talking about, oh, what do we say to our friend group if we have an issue? Do we vent to them or not? Have that same conversation of, okay, for our investors, they're kind of a shared network group for us. How are we using them? What challenges do we share with them? And what challenges do we share with them individually, and what do we bring to them together?
Right.
Because I also think that, if you're facing a co-founder conflict, you should talk to your investor, but you should do that together.
Yeah. So let's switch gears a little bit and talk about success stories. So what do the best co-founding teams just do differently?
They have a deep understanding of how the other works and what outside of work makes them tick. They know why they're there. They know what the other person is in it for. And they also have a deep respect for each other, such that if you're asking them, going back in time, would you choose to work with this person again? Their answer is absolutely yes. And they're they are the most incredible at what they do. There's this deep respect and trust, and not just operational trust that they can do their job really well, but there's a deep personal trust that they will make a decision that not only serves themselves, but that, you feel included in. You know that they'll be making the right decision for you and for the company, and that's included in their factors. So I think that's those basic things, but they are hard to build up, and it takes time, and that's not something that you can have with a stranger if you're co-founder dating on day one. Yeah. So I think it's one of the harder things.
It takes a lot of actual nurturing. So
so
a choice to say this relationship is very important I choose to put the effort into nurturing it, because going through these cards and asking these tough questions, right? Having that meeting every single week where you're not talking about the company. You're talking about your dynamic, your relationship, how you are feeding off of each other in sometimes positive ways, maybe in sometimes negative ways. That takes a lot of effort.
Yeah.
Especially for certain people who are maybe a little more introverted or aren't used to sharing maybe didn't grow up in a place where they shared their feelings, right? It can take a lot of effort. And so it's actively making that choice every day.
Yeah. And not to mention, like we talked about the founder's brain, and how it's like constantly under stress. You have very minimal capacity. You're also moving at an incredibly fast pace and velocity. And it's just like, how do you make the time for this? And it's a hard question. And as you said, it's a choice. And this, I always say, your co-founder relationship should never be your number one priority in my book. Like, you have a ton of other things that need to be number one, number two, number three, but it should be at the bottom of your top priorities. And you need to nurture it. You need to spend time weekly having conversations to kind of keep it not surfacing up to number one. Like, it's incredibly important, should be, 3, 4, or 5.
Yeah.
But there's so many other things on your mind. You need to be nurturing it regularly.
All right, I'm going to drop a really fun one on you. What about husband-wife co-founding teams?
What about them?
What priority is the co-founder relationship, and how do they bridge that? So I'll give you an example of one that I interviewed, Adriana Carrick from Little Words Project, and her husband has now become CEO. So she founded the company. He supported her. He then came to work as COO for the company after COVID, and recently has become CEO. And they have such a great dynamic. She talked about it on the podcast, and I think some of the things you were mentioning about that level of trust, right? That level of being able to talk about the other person in such a way where even if someone's never met them, they already value them as a person is so important. But have you seen a lot of those dynamics actually work, where you're in a romantic relationship with someone and then you're also co-founding with them?
I have seen it work, and it definitely works for some people. I have also interviewed a few married couples who have either started the company together or actually were co-founders and then got married.
Oh. So they were really having those weekly check-ins.
Yes, they were really having those weekly check-ins, and they were really values aligned. There's like 2 episodes with married couples on the How I Met My Co-Founder podcast, and they really work. Like, you listen to them and you're like, this makes a ton of sense. In those conversations, I realized for me, it would not work. I like my business life separate from my personal life, and I like different people to hold different roles in my life. And blending those really stresses me out. So I would encourage anyone thinking of starting a company with their spouse to listen to how other people have done it and what they love about it, what are some challenges with it, and see, are those challenges that you want to put up with and make that sacrifice on, are those things that you're excited about to do together, and really hear other people's experiences, because it's really right for some and it's really not right for others. But the only way you can figure that out is by experimenting with it for yourself, or if you have that really in tune self-awareness, you might be able to know by hearing other people's stories.
Yeah, I think also every relationship dynamic is very different. And so, it could depend on the type of company you're even thinking
100%.
about starting and who has what skill set. But I always find it to be very interesting just thinking back to how my husband and I navigated COVID, and then thinking about, could we actually just do that every single day?
Yeah.
And I think I might be in your camp, although we dabble in things. And, we've renovated houses and things like that. But very different than running a business together.
Yes. Again, it depends on the type of project. Is it time bounded?
Will it end? Yes, will it end?
Yes.
All right. So, Annie, tell our listeners, this is our last episode of this series, which I'm so sad about, but tell our listeners how they can find you. We've had everything in the show notes, but what is your favorite way for people to get in touch with you? What types of people should reach out?
Anyone who's interested in this type of work, I'm more than happy to talk to, whether it's someone who's interested in delivering this type of work, if it's someone starting a company and thinking about, do I need a co-founder? What should I be thinking about? Ideally, you come to me when you are in kind of the building stage. If you come to me and you're in deep conflict with your co-founder, I have a lot of friends who are incredible at that work, and I will send your name to them. But for me, I love helping people set up the right infrastructure. I love giving them the right building blocks, the playbook of conversations to have, more on that kind of like premarital counseling side of things. Like, what do we need to talk about to accelerate our decision making and help us grow faster? And doing that across, seed through Series A, I think is so exciting. You're forming the right habits.
Yes.
You don't need to do the behavior change because you're in the habit formation stage.
Build the right foundation.
Build the right foundation. I'm super excited to chat with any of those people. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Substack. You could drop me an email, like truly whatever. I'm just really excited to get the word out there on co-founder relationships and really push forward this movement.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much for joining us, Annie. We really appreciate it. This has been our 4-episode arc on co-founder relationships on Managed Chaos podcast. You can find us wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, and we will see you on the next episode.
Outsourcing your US tech talent shouldn't be hard. With Pobble.io, we deliver high-quality teams on demand and provide huge cost savings to your business. Try it now at Pobble.io. Mention the amazing guys at Managed Chaos when you email us and get a free market data report. Email contact@Pobble.io.